Well, the bulk of our parsha is devoted to the census of two families of Levium, Gershon and Merari, and to the inauguration of the Mishkan, including the gifts that all the princes of the tribes brought in the initial days of the Mishkan. Sandwiched in the middle of the parsha are three other topics: Birchas Kohanim, the case of the Sota, and the laws of the Nazir. Picking up on the last of those themes, the Haftorah that we will read this Shabbos of Naso tells the fascinating story of the birth of Shimshon, perhaps one of the most famous Nazirs of Jewish history, who would later be given exceptional strength by Hashem and come to defend the Jewish people from its enemies with great valor. The story of Shimshon's birth, which actually is mentioned only towards the end of the Haftorah, takes place in the period of the Shoftim in Israel. It's always nice, actually, to read this story of this Haftorah right after Shavuos, after having reflected so much on the book of Ruth, which also takes place during this exact same time period. The period was a transitional one in the national life of the Jewish people, and it spanned from the time after the conquest of the land with Yoshua all the way into the establishment of a king in Israel in the time of Shmuel Hanavi and Shaul HaMelech. They were living in the land, but had no king, and thus needed leadership of a different sort, fulfilled through the Shoftim, the judges, who were meant to govern this newly formed country in the land of Israel. This was a period of unrest, both internally and externally. It was a period in which the Jewish people had a certain struggle with their observance of Hashem's Torah. It waxed and it waned. And it was a period in which they also struggled fighting wars and battles with their neighbors, from Aram to Moab, Chatzor, Midian, Amalek, Ammon, and of course the Plishtim. From a theological perspective, the stories of Sefer Shoftim follow the very same pattern. The Jewish people sin against Hashem, they fall prey to their enemies, Hashem sends them a judge to lead them and save them and help them, and they end up prevailing over their enemies and returning to Hashem until the next time the cycle starts all over again. There were 6 major Shoftim during this time, the last of which was Shimshon, whose story begins in our Haftorah. The story begins with a couple from the tribe of Dan living in the town of Tzorah, struggling with infertility. In a biblical paradigm familiar to us, an angel appeared to this couple, Manoach, and his wife, who isn't named, and told them that they would indeed have a child. It's hard to imagine just how much this couple must have struggled in not having a child, just as many today in our world and even in our own community struggle in much the same way with infertility. It is not hard to imagine just how much joy and relief this great news must have brought them. The angel does give one condition or caveat to this miraculous birth. The baby born must become a Nazir from birth. Not only that, but even in utero, the fetus must be of an elevated status, so the mother herself should already begin to practice the laws of Nazirus while the baby is in her womb. According to our Parsha, there are 3 restrictions placed upon the Nazir. The Nazir may not drink any wine or wine products, he may not cut his hair, and he may not become tameh from a corpse. A person taking the vow of voluntarily becoming a Nazir can take it upon himself for a set amount of time, after which there's a set of rituals and korbanos that must be offered to exit the time of Nazirus. However, a person can also take on the Nazirus for life, forever. Nowadays, a person could, in theory, take on a vow of Nazirus, but it would be de facto a lifetime Nazirus, since in the absence of the Beis HaMikdash, there would be no way for the Nazir to exit his time of Nazirus or to ever return to the normalcy of life. Shimshon was obligated to be a Nazir for life, adhering strictly to the 3 categories of prohibitions outlined in our Parsha, which also had to be kept by his mother before he was born. After receiving the great news, Manoach's wife excitedly called for her husband to share the amazing news. Whether out of incredulity or a desire to experience the news himself, Manoach pleaded with Hashem to send the messenger again so he could hear the news firsthand. It's not clear whether Manoach understood that the messenger was an angel, but he clearly realized that Hashem had sent him and asked for him to return. While this request in and of itself is not necessarily surprising, the reason Manoach attributed to his request and the response of the angel of Hashem are quite puzzling. Manoach said that the reason he wanted to see the angel was to find out how to instruct his yet unborn son. Vayetar Manoach el Hashem, Manoach cries out to Hashem, Vayomar, and he says to him, Be Hashem, Ish Elokim asher shalachta, Yavo na'od eleinu. Please, Hashem, let the Ish Elokim, let the man of God, the messenger that you sent, come again to us. Why? The Yoreinu ma na'aseh lanar hayulad. So he can instruct us what should be done to the child that is born. Why would Manoach want to know what was to be done for the child once it was born? What further information did he need about what to do? The laws of Nazirus would have been known and familiar in his time. Manoach himself must have known the basic laws of the Torah, and even if he wanted further elaboration on the details of the rabbinic enactments surrounding the laws of Nazirus, he could have gone to any local Kohen or Talmud Chacham or minor judge. What did he need the angel for? Why did he need to call him back? Why was it Vayetar? He pleaded with God with all his might in order to get this specific angel back. Furthermore, the angel had already given the exact instructions to his wife, who also repeated the instructions to him, if you look carefully in the Haftorah. So why did he need to hear it all again? To further complicate matters and reinforce our question, once Hashem acceded to his request and sent another angel, the angel simply repeated back what he had said to Manoach's wife, without adding anything new, showing that the whole venture seems to have been futile. He said the exact same thing as he said already to Manoach's wife. He just repeated it. Nothing new was revealed to Manoach. In fact, in the conversation with Manoach, he says twice that Manoach should simply keep that which he had already told Manoach's wife. He says, Vayomer Manoach, atay yavo devarecha, ma yeh mishpat hanar u'maaseu. Fine, I'm going to tell you now what's what. Vayomer Malach Hashem al Manoach. The Malach says to Manoach, Mikol asher amarti el ha'isha tishamer. Everything I told your wife, be careful about. Mikol asher yitzei migefana yain lo tocha v'yain v'sheichara teishtechol tuma tocha. He repeats the laws. You can't drink wine. Your son will not be able to drink wine. He will not be able to become tamei lemeis. Kol asher tzivisi atishmor. Again, he repeats. Everything I commanded your wife, you should keep. Basically, he's saying, whatever I told your wife about the laws of Nazirus, I'm telling you again. Why did he need to repeat this? Rav Shimon Schwab in his Sefer Mayan Beis HaShoeva has a beautiful passage in which he explains both Manoach's request and the angel's response. He says, V'hanireh bazeh, shafilu haya Manoach yodea dine Nazirus, lo haita bakashaso ela behilchos chinuch. Shiratzah ladas ma na'aseh lanar hayulad daika. Shaya tamua beinav. Ech yitzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'av legadel ulechanech ben nazir. Bikdusha nosefes bisurim nosafim bel shar ha'am. He wasn't asking a question about the specifics of the laws of Nazirus. The reason Manoach wanted to call the angel back is to ask him for advice in chinuch. How am I supposed to raise a son to Kedusha? Manoach wasn't asking for the details of what halachos his son, the Nazir, would have to keep. That kind of information could have been gotten from any local person well-versed in halacha. That information was already given to his wife. What he was asking of the angel was much broader than that. He was asking what it means to raise such a special child. He was asking what it looks like to be the dad of a Nazir. He was asking for advice about how to best set up his future and his son's future for ultimate success. He was asking what his role should be in shaping this important person that would play a significant part in the national life of the Jewish people. He was asking for guidance about parenting and about education, about how to instill a love for holiness in the next generation. He was asking how he should behave in order for his son to be a proper Nazir. What a simple and beautiful desire. What a simple and beautiful request. What humility it must have taken to say, hey, that sounds amazing, but I don't think I'm quite equipped to know what it means to do this job right. What positive chutzpah it must have taken to say, hey, this is too important to ask any random person. I want Hashem to send me the messenger himself to tell me how to do this best. I want the most expert advice available, and nothing less will do. Manoach's request was not redundant or silly or thoughtless. It was a deep one that we can all learn from. How often are we too ashamed to ask for help, even when it comes to the most important aspects of our lives? How often are we too proud to show that we aren't sure what we're doing? How often are we too shy to bother someone for advice and guidance, even if we know they might have a huge impact on our lives and our success? How often, even without all those feelings, do we really go out of our way to seek advice and guidance in religious matters, in matters that pertain to the holiness of our lives and our ability to keep mitzvos and grow in Kedusha? Manoach went out on a huge limb and went ahead and asked Hashem for yet another audience with his messenger. Surely our requests of Hashem and our fellow human beings would be much less dramatic, but equally valuable. The angel's answer to Manoach's noble request is as enlightening as the request itself. According to Rav Schwab, the angel was not just repeating back the laws of Nazirus and telling Manoach, ditto to everything I told your wife. He was actually instructing Manoach to keep the laws himself, if he expected his son to follow them as well. When the angel said, Kol asher tzivisiha tishmor, everything I commanded her you should keep, he was not saying all the things I told your wife that your son must do, you should help him do. Rather, he was saying all the practices of Nazirus that I told your wife to keep while she is pregnant, you should keep alongside your son as well. What the angel was telling Manoach was, if you're truly asking how to best raise your son as a Nazir, the most significant thing I can tell you is practice what you preach. If you will be telling him to do X, Y, and Z, then there is no better way to ensure that he will follow your guidance than if he sees you doing the same. Actions speak so much louder than words. For kids, but truly for all of us, the behaviors we see modeled for us, the behaviors we see other people exhibiting, are much easier to follow than the ones that are simply spoken to us in verbal instruction. The story of Manoach and the angel that we'll read this Shabbos can be such a helpful model for those raising children. It can remind parents that modeling is one of the best ways to reach and teach your children. However, the message of the story goes beyond parenting as well. Whether it be at work, in our businesses, in our friendships, in our families, and certainly in our community, our actions speak louder than our words. Our actions coupled with the right words speak even louder than that. That combination can have the greatest effect of all. By modeling the things we speak of and the things we aspire to, we not only reinforce them for ourselves, but we also create a model that is easier for others to follow. In that way, we can be catalysts towards the growth of others around us and help people to gain the success they strive for along their most important journeys of life. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.